Horror Convos, come on in, have a seat, stay a while, take a load off out into the beat. We can just chill, have a drink, say what's on our mind. Never know what you're thinking, hey, it could be neat. Fear is everywhere, in your mind, on the street, in the earth, and the stars. Scary things you left for free. What you gotta say about it? Having fun, you and me. If you got nowhere to go, no place to be, just relax, have a chat, but don't think it's therapy. If you get too afraid, there's a door you can leave. Good night and be well. Maybe talk again, we'll see. Good night and be well. Maybe talk again, we'll see. You can night be well. Maybe talk again, we'll see.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Horror Convos, a casual, relaxing, and occasionally funny podcast where we choose one horror topic per episode and discuss anything related to it that we want. Movies, TV, novels, comics, video games, radio dramas, personal experiences. Nothing is off limits here. I often have guests join as we share our opinions and compare examples that portray the subject. New episodes release every other Wednesday. Horror Convos is available to listen to on YouTube and Spotify. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and come hang out at the Horror Convos Facebook page to share your thoughts, keep up with updates on the show, and leave suggestions. If you want to listen to the podcast without commercials, you can go to patreon.com/horrorconvos. Tier 1 membership gets you full episodes ad-free, as well as exclusive content like outtakes that didn't make it into the podcast. Tier 2 membership gets you access to vote on what we discuss in special event episodes. We appreciate everyone who donates to help our little podcast grow. That's patreon.com/horrorconvos. If you'd like to be a guest and have a subject you're passionate about, you can send an email to keithhorrorconvos@yahoo.com, all one word, all lowercase. I can't realistically have everyone on, but will review every email I can. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss when our newest content is uploaded. I'm your host, Keith Harris. So this show is going to be the first discussion on examples from an often underappreciated subgenre, horror fantasy. It does often overlap with dark fantasy depending on the IP. Sometimes the fantasy elements outweigh the horror elements depending on who you ask, but that's part of why I find it interesting. You know, it's a unique spectrum in its own right. And today's guest is someone very special that I've been waiting for, I think, over a year at this point to have on. It was an ordeal, to say the least. We had to reschedule on each other several times to the point that it felt like we were playing text tag. And as if that wasn't fun enough, a thunderstorm on the day we finally settled to record interfered with the power and internet twice. So yeah, that was very entertaining to deal with. After the second power blink, we wondered if somebody out there didn't want us to get this episode done.
It was never meant to be! Fate has conspired against us!
But luckily, this podcast is not that important, and neither am I. That kind of attitude is just good old-fashioned human ego. Thankfully, in lieu of rescheduling again, we powered through and got this done. You listeners are in for a treat. Joining me today is my oldest friend, a lover of horror, romance, fantasy, and a scholar of the dark arts, fully certified in the state of Virginia. You would not believe all the bullshit background checks and financial information they require for that. She has the same first name as my friend who hosts Plug It Up, but with different spelling. Please welcome him to the podcast, Caitlynne.
Spoiler alert!
I have known the host here since 8th grade, which is 16 years now.
No! I ain't old! I ain't old!
Caitlynne is probably my oldest friend at this point as far as people I knew from school. We've pretty much been through thick and thin. In one form or another. And, of all the people that I lost touch with after graduation, she's pretty much the Only one who I've maintained a semi-consistent relationship with, so that I don't go mad from isolation. And so I thank you for your service in that regard, ma'am.
I salute. I salute.
Yeah, salud. Raise our glasses. Caitlynne was actually one of the first people to kind of get me into some horror-related stories regarding literature. Or, she and I were both big into certain anime and manga. Like, she was a huge Inuyasha fan. I had some exposure to it as a kid, watching it on Adult Swim. She has seen all of it. I owned all the manga at one point. I believe I offered to mail it to you, but I ended up selling it to someone else. I think.
I remember that.
Yeah, and now she's on the Yashahime, whatever they call it, the next gen Inuyasha series, which I'm generally not into next generation stories. She's big into fantasy and dark fantasy. And we shared some common interests in horror, but we're going to be discussing a kind of dark fantasy horror blend sort of series that I had never heard of until you introduced me to it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about this? It's called From Blood and Ash, I believe.
Yes, the first series in this, because it's kind of, she has two series for this one, but they kind of intermingle. But the first one is called From Blood and Ash. Trying to find a good way to describe that, because it's kind of a long-winded explanation if you want to go into the full description of it.
Hey, go right ahead. I'll let you know if I start to drift off.
Yeah, it's about this girl who's basically she's known as the Maiden. And her name is Poppy Balfour. She is known as the Maiden, all shrouded in white, hood over face. Like, she is basically what I think people would call a saint. Like, they worship her, revere her, even though she's never spoken, never said a word. And it's not because she doesn't want to, she can't. Like, she is not allowed to actually speak to any of the people, because otherwise it may offend the gods, or so these people who are in charge of her believe. She has been in the belief for her entire life that the gods pick certain people to be chosen, and they have pretty much convinced her that she is. Like, she is the gods chosen. Until one day, there is an uprising, which the people that she lives with are not happy about, because they are getting sick of their kids being stolen away, because they said it is the gods' right to have these kids, like their second daughters, third sons, like they get taken away at a certain age, I think 8, 9, sometimes before they're even born, or before they're, like, right after they're born, they get taken because it is the God's will, and they are never seen again.
FBI, open up!
As far as some are told, like, they are never seen. You don't know what happens to them. The Lord and Lady are just like, it is the God's will. You should be happy about this, and so on and so forth.
That sounds like He Who Walks Behind the Rose from Children of the Corn.
Yeah. Poppy does not agree with any of this, but...
No way! Inconceivable!
She is used to this, so she really just does not know what to say. And if she ever tried to speak up, the Lord, he likes to punish her. When he does something that dissatisfies her, which is pretty much anything, he thinks of an excuse to cane her if she tries to speak out.
You will learn respect, and suffering will be your teacher.
Until one day, these rebels show up that are tired of it, and thus the phrase, "From blood and ash, we will rise." And after that, a knight in our basically comes in as a knight as her royal bodyguard since her guard that was looking after her got killed. He comes in, and once he comes in, a whole bunch of other stuff just the whole plot line starts up way after that. And with this series comes all sorts of creatures, from the ugly to the completely beautiful to the just disdainable. Bleh.
Damn, you're ugly.
The first one is called a Craven, which is, you kind of want to think of vampire, but only if they were just completely deathless and had no incapacity for a brain whatsoever, which is basically what a Craven is. It is... Vampires at least have a bit of thought in their heads, like when they go bloodlusting or whatnot. Craven do not. Craven
Is this a creature based on existing mythology, or is it just a creation of the story?
It is a creation of the story. No, Cravens are made from a poisonous kiss from one of the species in the series. They are only created by a poisonous kiss, and once there is no cure for that. Like, once you become a Craven, that's it. And it only takes a few seconds to turn into one. So basically, if a person knows they've gotten bit or anything by a Craven, they know they're dead within 5 minutes.
Sounds like the vampire equivalent to the rage virus from 28 Days Later, or a World War Z. It's like you just turn in seconds.
Yeah, I would say closer to World War Z, just because there is a vampire species in this book. There is a vampire species in this one. It's just not called vampires. They're called the Ascended, which are the higher-ups, the pale skin, the black eyes, don't go out really much in sunlight. They don't die, but they don't really stay out in the sunlight much.
I just did a whole episode talking with a friend of mine about vampires, so it's just we ran the gamut as far as how different folklores portray their powers and weaknesses and the rules for how they work and stuff. It's like vampires are one of the most almost absurdly versatile monsters in all of fiction, and it at least compared to the other classics like werewolf and zombie and mummy and so on.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they have wolf type creatures in here too, which are they're called woven. They don't typically stand on two legs like the werewolves do, but they do turn into, these men or women, they do turn into wolves. And they are bonded to said god or goddess. When it's a call deep in their blood, it is a call when the god that is the main portion of this book, when the goddess awakens, they feel a call to her. One that is not necessarily their own, but they are drawn to her.
This is sounding a little bit like Castlevania.
Maybe it's slightly context, but once you read the book, it is way more than it is way more than Castlevania.
Yeah, sounds like it. Quick aside for a second.
Yeah.
What is it with fictional deities and children? At some point, can all you mythic beings just stop with the kids? I'm just saying, it's not a good look.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, because it doesn't seem to matter what kind of book you read. There's always something about kids in a fantasy book about, one being at a certain age. Oh, no, they have to go this way or that.
I mean, even real life religions, too. It's just... I don't know. It just, at a certain point, it seems like not the healthiest pattern to notice in them, in religions and mythologies, and whatever. It's just, Greek mythology is all over the place with this crap. And it's like so many of those gods are straight up perverts, but it's just...
Oh, no, there's too much gods in this one. There is a few stick-go gods in this one. I can tell you that right now.
Stranger danger!
But to go back to a little fantasy lore, there is a creature known as a changeling. If you go back to your Fae lore, there is a changeling in this series. Only it is not a Fae. It is between deity and a werewolf, which is basically a god and a wolf. They can still change form, but it is not of a Fae. Because you know how changelings, they like swipe one child for another, yada yada. It is old Fae lore, like Faes back
Honestly,
then.
you're asking the wrong guy with that one.
Oh boy. Okay. Oh.
So, what is the general journey of the story as far as like the main character, or how does this tie into the monsters? Does she like eventually find a cure for them or something,
No,
or does she like?
No, these are the monsters she pops up along the way. Like this journey, the book series is about her and like who she is, because she's been told all her life she's one thing when she's actually another. So this story is about her whole journey.
Okay. Some dark fantasy stories you'll have characters like their journey involves like healing the curse on the world that is creating all these monsters and creatures to begin with. At other times that the monsters and entities are kind of just there to serve as obstacles, often symbolic ones, and for the main character as they go through their development. So yeah, it's like I've seen all sorts of different meanings and inspirations behind why horror and dark fantasy authors apply certain creatures and types of enemies into their story. And you see this, like a lot of this with dark fantasy, especially. So I didn't know if there was some specific meaning behind certain enemy types that ties into the character's personal arc.
No, I mean, kind of, but that's not for this series. That's for the prequel series, because that other series kind of explains as to how these creatures came to be. But that one is kind of, I don't really know how to fully describe that one, so I'm not going to try and go into the prequel series. Like, I'm not, Nope. That's too many books to explain and too long of a description.
Is this book series still going on, or is the main story finished?
It is still going. There is another.
Okay, gotcha.
In September.
Interesting. I mean, off the top of my head, probably the only dark fantasy series that I'm most familiar with. It's not technically horror, but it does have horror elements at points, at least in terms of how some of the creatures are presented and how they operate within the lore. Probably Game of Thrones and The Witcher.
Yeah, The Witcher, I can understand that.
And Castlevania, of course, I mentioned that earlier, but I didn't grow up playing the Castlevania games. I was aware of them, but I mainly knew. Yeah, I mainly knew it through the animated series. He's the first one, not Nocturne. Claymore, Attack on Titan, and Vampire Hunter D are good choices too if you like dark fantasy series that verge into horror territory at points. In Claymore's case, I personally prefer the manga's version of the story over the anime adaptation, but to be fair, the anime didn't get to adapt the entire manga, so it's kind of a 2003 Full Metal Alchemist situation.
I understand. No, I've read some of the Witcher books. I have to still read a bunch of them. And I read the Game of Thrones ones, despite the idiot never finishing them. But, not talking about that.
And hey, there's always hope. And as long as he's still breathing and his hand can function.
I doubt he's going to even release that one, dude. To be completely blunt and honest, I doubt he's going to release it, because he's made way too much money off the series at this point. I doubt he even cares anymore. A lot of us now, because Romantasy is making its big way into book talk, which is what I'm doing now. You got series like From Blood and Dash, Throne of Glass, Crescent City, or my personal favorite, A Court of Thorns and Roses. And then you've got books like Quicksilver. Yeah, no, you got fantasy romantasy books taking over. George R. R. Martin is kind of like, bye-bye.
Romantasy? Is that what they're
Yes.
calling it now?
Yes. It
Oh my
is.
god.
It is fantasy mixed with romance.
A lot of titles based on minerals and plants, I'm noticing.
Yeah, there are some titles based on that.
Yeah, after Inuyasha, I would say in terms of books, then the first one that you strong-armed me into would definitely be Twilight, like you and my mom both.
Yep.
You and I are old enough to remember when Twilight was first becoming popular, and it was fucking everywhere, man. And just even before the movie started, I was seeing the advertisements for the book cover all over the place. There is a whole decade's worth of pop cultural references that we owe to that series.
This is how we're represented. Unbelievable.
I was a Twilight girl, and I still am deep in my heart. I am a Twilight girl for life.
Yes, you were. God, just for those of you listening, just this woman would not leave me the fuck alone about Twilight in high school. It's that she was
really. I was more talking to Jesse than you about it.
Is you and Jesse and like at least one or two other people I know, just people were talking me up and up and up. And I got introduced to it through the movies before the books. So, I went to see the first movie, I think, in theaters. I think I saw the first two in theaters. I still haven't seen the 2-part Breaking Dawn movie. It's like I've read all the books, so I know what happens. But after the Eclipse movie, I just became so disenchanted with the movies, and like even from the first movie onward, the only thing I ever liked about the Twilight movies specifically was the action, because they had a lot more fights in the movies that weren't in the books, or they put more effort into visually illustrating the fights as they were described in the books. It's very much like the distinction between how the Harry Potter books describe the wizard duels, the spells and stuff, versus how they translated it into the movies, because there was a lot they had to sort of make up as they went along for, okay, how do we translate the descriptions of these spells and curses on screen for people? Well, and a lot of what they came up with just ended up being different colors of a glow stick juice and sparks just shooting at each other, just basically different 2000s particle effects off a computer. It's always interesting how in the case of dark fantasy or horror creatures, there's especially vampires, how they'll translate the way different vampire powers are described in literature into movies or film, because some vampire abilities or some fictional monster abilities in general honestly don't lend themselves very well to easily being adapted for the screen, just the way the authors illustrate them. Yeah, I mean,
in terms of, I was going to say, in terms of Twilight, I was an Edward girly in school. I was, until years later, and now I'm like, why the heck didn't you go with Jacob? Movies.
I was there for the height of the Team Edward versus Team Jacob war. Those of you who are too young to remember that great war, I was caught in the middle of it, pulled between this way or the other, and almost from the very beginning, I was in the same camp that I still am today, which is the fuck both of you, you're both creeps camp. Yeah, but Stephanie Meyer, all I can say is she is lucky she was a woman, because if a man had written this story, holy shit, the amount of cancel culture types that would have been on his ass with the way that this romance plays out between Edward and Jacob. Is just like everybody and their grandmother has yeah, it's like everybody and their grandmother has talked pretty much every angle about the problematic elements of either of those teams. I have a friend named Mary who does a whole a podcast pretty much dedicated to ripping the Twilight series apart, and she does it as someone who was a fan of the series. Like, she and her friends, like, they were all people, from what I remember, from what she told me, who loved Twilight, and then they just have fun and just ripping it apart now. It's all in good fun, but yeah, I'll have to link you her podcast. Just, I forget what she calls it, but it is just, there's a reason that the meme "Still a Better Love Story Than Twilight" became so popular, because holy shit, did Stephenie Meyer create one beautiful mess?
Oh yeah, she did. But I love her for it. I do.
Yeah, she definitely gave people it's entertainment. Like, whether you love the story or hate it, like, either way, it's definitely entertaining. I will say that.
Yeah.
You must choose, Bella. Do you want the 100-plus-year-old vampire in the body of a 17-year-old while you're still a minor yourself, or do you want the werewolf who, it turns out, was attracted to you this whole time because of the spirit of your unborn daughter, who apparently is now already connecting to the werewolf on a spiritual level, suggesting that by the time she grows up, which will be at a very rapid pace, then you get into the whole biology versus chronology argument with her as far as when she's an adult. Now she's gonna be attracted to the werewolf, apparently, and it's just like, oh boy, Stephenie, you what an imagination you had with this one.
I was gonna say, weren't we supposed to be talking about the creatures in this one, dude? Not ripping on it.
There's more than one kind of horror in these stories, man. I'm just saying that is a whole other nightmare all its own. Just navigating the relationship dynamics of these kinds of stories.
No, you want to go to horror? Go to Underworld. For all those listeners, you want a real horror with vampires and werewolves? Go watch Underworld.
Hey, I grew up on Underworld. Yeah, the first two Underworld movies. You could make an argument for the third one if you want like a solid trilogy out of it, but the first two I thought were awesome.
Oh yeah, no, the first two, there's no argument there. The first two were, they were it.
It's literally the Matrix with vampires. It's like you can so clearly see the Matrix's influence on this series about, black leather wearing vampires doing gravity defying kung fu. There's a whole generation of media that was directly influenced by the Matrix, which is funny considering that the Matrix itself, it'll feel like the Wachowskis so clearly took influence from anime when they made that series. It's like you can see a little bit of Ghost in the Shell in the Matrix. I will say, in terms of writing, Stephenie Meyer is not a terrible author. I've read stuff that was so much worse. There was a good story in Twilight somewhere. I just think that it really went off the rails very quickly in terms of some of the decisions that she made for the characters. And I like Kristen Stewart. I've never hated her, but she was one of the worst casting choices I could imagine to play Bella. It was one of the most blah performances I have ever seen to date from a movie. Again, has nothing to do with her being a woman. And she just...
No, I know.
I've seen movies where she can act and her acting style works to the story's advantage. Like for those of you listening, if you haven't seen it, go back. Best Kristen Stewart movie ever made, in my opinion, is Speak. I believe it's based on a true story, or it was inspired by one. And I forget what year it was made. Let me Google it real quick. But yeah, like long before she had her breakout role in Twilight, she gave the best performance of her life, in my opinion, in Speak. I watched it on TV once, and 2004, 4 years before the first Twilight film came out, Kristen gave the best performance of her career, in my opinion, and her reserved acting style worked perfectly for the character that she played in that movie. It doesn't work for Bella, though, because Bella is described as being so much more emotional in the books, and I just never got that in the movies at all.
Okay, I can get that.
I mean, are there worse people that could have played the role? Sure, but it's just it's really kind of the worst case scenario for me, because if someone plays a role so badly that you can be entertained by how bad it is, at the very least, that's still something, you can laugh at it. And if they do it well, then you can be impressed by it. But and I don't entirely blame Kristen either. I think the director is just as much to blame for how she was directed. There's so many people, just completely ignore the role of the director when it comes to how actors portray their characters. But But with Kristen Stewart, it's like I wasn't deeply offended by her performance as Bella, and I wasn't at all impressed by it either. It's like this middle of the road kind of gray area where I was just kind of underwhelmed. That she's just kind of there. Yeah. I don't know. There. She does get better, I will say, as the movies go on. She does get more into her groove of portraying the character, but it's like even in the highly dramatic moments where she's like, she's punching Jacob after he sexually assaults her, and then she's going off on him about oh, you named my child after the Loch Ness monster. It's like those moments in the books, I could visualize Bella getting genuinely dramatic and like high octane emotional. But in the movies, watching Kristen do it, it's like, at best, I was just kind of laughing because I'm just like, oh my God, it's just Kristen, what are you doing? Like, what was the director telling you to do with this scene?
It's not even the director, it's Kristen Stewart. Unfortunately, she has the tendency to do that, like, because of her facial expressions. Kristen Stewart doesn't have good facial expressions. It's not even just for this movie. It's almost all movies she's done. Her facial expressions they're not there.
Well, she just doesn't have the I think it's less her personality and more just the on-screen energy that she brings. Like, some actors just don't have the energy that's demanded of specific characters. I'm not saying she needs to, go all out like, Jennifer Lawrence in Silver Linings Playbook, and she certainly doesn't have to be all over the place, to a comedic extent like Jim Carrey or Robin Williams. But there's just a certain kind of dramatic, I don't know if I'm using the word inflection correctly. There's a certain energy you have to bring to certain roles for it to be convincing. And Kristen is just so naturally reserved. I've never seen her in a movie where she goes like all out with like crying or anger. And that's fine depending on the story. But, the harsh truth is some actors just don't have a lot of range to them. It's like,
they don't.
It's like even Adam Sandler, the best performance I've seen from him is in Uncut Gems and Reign Over Me. And even in those movies, you can see he's clearly channeling himself into those roles. I've never seen him in a movie where he wasn't playing basically an exaggerated version of himself in some capacity. But that works for him. It's he's playing to his strengths.
No, Kristen Stewart unfortunately does not have a range when it comes to her facial expressions, and that's not always a good thing.
People who love Twilight, who defend it, to die on the hill of defending it, you can call me a hater if you want to. Call me whatever you want. I'm just saying, I read the books. I watched enough of the movies. Like I lived through the era of when Twilight was at its peak pop cultural relevance. So I know a little bit of what I'm talking about here. I'm just saying, I'm not talking out of my ass here. I was there. with you and I were both there.
Yes, and I could say, as one who has the movies and all 4 of the books, even I can say a little bit of it, but I still love Twilight.
There's 6 of them now, isn't there? It's like there's the short Second Life of Bree Tanner, and then there's the version of retelling Twilight from Edward's perspective.
Yeah, but that's not the main series, though. The main series is 4 books.
Yeah, I've forgotten how many of the books there are at this point. I mean, it's like Harry Potter. It's like I did not pay one bit of attention to the Cursed Child. It sounded like a fan fiction to me.
I totally get that.
Remind me, am I misremembering this, or did Stephanie Meyer say that her inspiration for Twilight started off as a Harry Potter fan fiction?
Harry Potter, no. I do not believe so, no.
Where did she get the idea from? I remember her talking about it. I thought she said that it I could be completely misremembering. I thought I read that she said in an interview once that she started off writing it on her BlackBerry, and initially it started off as a fan fiction for another story, but then she changed it to become its own thing over time. That was 50 Shades of Grey.
I can't remember.
I'll have to look that up later. God, I haven't thought about this stuff in so long. Yeah, my mom was a big fan of the movies. She and my stepdad have probably seen all of them at this point. I keep telling myself I should watch Breaking Dawn just so I can say that I saw all of them. I did watch the fight scene from it between everyone and the Volturi. It's like that. That was that.
You need to watch the whole thing, dude. You can't just watch a part of it and say you've seen it. Nope.
But so much of it is boring.
No, you need to watch the whole thing, not just the fight.
I don't want to watch Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart act out a sex scene.
The fight that wasn't in the books. So yeah, no.
I don't want to watch Kristen act out a sex scene.
Well, you either do or you don't. You can't just watch part of a movie.
Oh, God. Isn't it enough that I read the books?
Sure.
Yeah. God, I remember you in high school, you would not shut up about, well, you can't say anything about the movies until you've read the books. Like, the books give so much more context to this or that. And
they do. They always do.
And then I powered through the books, and by the time I got to the end, I realized, okay, in terms of writing at the very least, the books are better. In terms of how it actually enhances my perception of the movies, it didn't do much for me either way. I mean, it is. I don't know. It's one of those things that just never clicked for me, I guess. I mean, to be completely transparent, I was never big into romantic dramas to begin with. So that's okay. I don't know. Just not my genre, I guess.
And that's okay.
You know what would have made it more interesting? I think, in my personal opinion, is if they had given Bella a human love interest, and it like just a third party for her to choose between Edward, Jacob, or someone that would represent a life of her remaining as a human. And because the story really does not put that much effort into making a good case for her to stay human. They made some effort, like the conversation she had with Edward's older sister, the blonde, what's her name?
Rosalie.
Yeah, Rosalie. I thought it was Rose something. But yeah, it's like that was the most effort in the books or the movies. That was the most effort that I saw put into making a case for her, staying human, aside from Edward, arguing over it. But it's just by the end, it's just like it was so obvious that she wasn't going to stay human that I'm just thinking to myself, you could have made a stronger case for that, or like given her a stronger temptation. And outside of, I'll turn into a grandma and Edward might not want me anymore, or if I choose to be a vampire, I'm going to outlive everyone I love. It's like, that's a given. Those are all givens. But if she had had a human love interest who she cared about just as much as Edward or Jacob, but in a different way, then I think that would have made her choice to stay with Edward more impacting. Because she would have been pulled in all three directions, as opposed to mostly being pulled between the vampire side or the werewolf side. That's just me. I don't know.
No, I totally get you.
One more 20-something playing a teenager for her to salivate over. Dude, it's like, I'm telling you, this is an example of the double standards that we have when it comes to how much we criticize men being perverts, or it's compared to women. When I went to see New Moon in theaters and Taylor Lautner took his shirt off for the first scene as Jacob, there were grown-ass women, like in their 30s or 40s, in this theater with me, and I heard them audibly go like, yeah, damn, baby. And it's just like, this is a character who's supposed to be a minor. And I'm just thinking to myself, if this had been a female character, even if it's a 20-something-year-old woman playing a teenager, and you had men in the theater catcalling her in the audience, that would have been a completely different reaction. Is there anything else you want to say about From Blood and Ash in terms of recommending it to people?
All I can say for that is, if you are looking for fantasy with a bit of romance and mystery and definitely some bits of horror and drama, I definitely recommend From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. It is a whole series, like you have the main series, then you have the prequel. There's a tandem read for it. If you want to look it up, go to her website. There is an order in which to read it. Otherwise, read at your own content, but I highly recommend it.
It's a hit. Well, thanks for coming on. God, I'm glad we finally got to talk again. It's been way too long.
Oh, I know.
And that is it for this episode of Horror Convos. Comment below. What examples of horror fantasy do you enjoy? Were you a Twilight lover growing up? Are you into From Blood and Ash? Are you on hashtag Team Vampire Creep, hashtag Team Furry Pervy, or hashtag Team Fuck All of You, I'm calling the police?
Back off! She's a minor!
Don't be shy with those opinions. Remember, this is more than a podcast. It is a dialogue between horror lovers. If you'd like to hear some fun riffing on the Twilight series, you can listen to my previous guest Mary's podcast, Skin of a Killer, which will be linked in the description below if you're watching this on YouTube. Here is your regular reminder that Horror Convos is available to listen to on YouTube and Spotify, and Spreaker. If you'd like to be a guest, remember to email keithhorrorconvos@yahoo.com. New episodes release every other Wednesday. We are back on track, so please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss when our newest content is uploaded. Until we talk again, good night and be well.